I'm going to show you how simple cutting templates can be. So you want to start off with your printed paper templates, and I'm printing the templates for the Bayside quilt. And I'm going to show you close up, but when I print out this page, I want to make sure my printer setting does not scale it down. If you do that, your template is going to be slightly the wrong size. So when I print off this page for my pattern, you can actually see that some of it gets cut off because I did not scale it down, or scale it to fit, as some printers might say. So I'm going to take my paper scissors, not my fabric scissors, and I'm going to cut very precisely along the edges of my template. You can also get your ruler and rotary cutter if you just want to slice away that way. So I have both of my printed template pages right here, and I'm going to measure this test square because that's really what's going to tell me if my printer printed this correctly. And it looks like it did. It's exactly 1 inch. So I know that these are perfect, these are to scale, and now I'm going to go ahead and slice them up. I'm going to choose to use my ruler and rotary cutter because I like speed, and that is fast. So I'm going to grab my rotary cutter. I'm going to line it up just like this. And I'm going to slice it. Now if you're going to cut this, like I said before, with scissors, make sure that you use paper scissors, not your fabric scissors. You will be so sad if you dull your fabric scissors on stupid templates. I'm going to be cutting templates out of what's called a batik. So there's no right side or wrong side. That means if I wanted to, I could fold my fabric in half and cut templates on top of each other so that I get 2 at a time. But if your fabric is not reversible, don't do that because templates usually have a direction, which means if you flip them, they won't work on your quilt piece. Depending on your type of template, you may want to get these really nice thick template sheets. You can get gridded or plain. I really like the gridded. For this Bayside quilt, however, I recommend that you just stick with the paper because the way the pattern has you cutting templates, you're actually trimming these templates 1/4 of an inch as you make the quilt. So if you cut your hard plastic templates, you're going to be cutting hard plastic quite often. So we're going to stick with the paper for this tutorial. So I've cut a straight edge along my fabric, and now I have my template. And as much as possible, I want to have as many edges of this template on grain. On grain is basically the weft and the warp of the thread that is making this fabric. When you cut a bias edge, it stretches. When you cut on grain, it's not quite as stretchy. So as much as possible, let's try to get these horizontal and vertical edges on grain. So the first thing I do is I measure the width of this template. If it's not written on the template, just take your ruler, place it on top, and measure it. And this is, it looks like 5 5/8 inches. So that's what I'm going to cut my strip, 5 5/8 inches. It's kind of a weird size, that's because this is a weird triangle. Okay, line up the edges of my ruler. Take your time, you know, if you feel like it's going kind of slowly. And if you want, you can even double check. Is that right? Oh, well, looks like I'm a whole inch off, so it's good that I didn't just do that. There we go. It looks like it's 6 5/8. I should probably write that on the template. Maybe by the time you get your hands on it, it'll have that number on there. Okay. And now I'm going to make my cut. Now, why did I do that? I did that because now I can lay my template on this strip. I can cut the base once, and I can cut this biased edge once, and then flip it, and then I'll have a nice edge. So I'm really just making this quick and easy on myself by cutting it into strips and then cutting those templates out. Whoops, sometimes that happens. That happens because my paper is really light and flimsy. And that's the whole reason why you would ever want that thicker template paper, because it's a little bit heavier and it doesn't just kind of float in the breeze like this paper is doing. So I'm just lining up. I'm at a weird angle right now because of this camera. This is very homemade. And because I doubled up on my fabric, I now have 2 of the same template, but I need 6 of this for the baby quilt that I'm going to make. So I'm going to make sure that when I'm cutting, this template is always facing up. I'm going to pretend like this fabric is not reversible, because if I were to do this... Okay, sorry about that, y'all. My camera died and I didn't even know, so I was just cruising on with the tutorial. But basically, you then flip your template, keeping the right side up. You definitely don't want to do this. And you're ready to go with the next slice. So you line up those edges, and then you just have one cut. And then you're going to have all of your templates from that one strip of fabric. Easy peasy. Now for the Bayside quilt, a large portion of what makes this quilt fun and exciting is that you use 2 templates that are trimmed down to create a multi-templated feel. So I have cut all that I need to cut from template A untrimmed. And now I'm going to line up the edge of my ruler with this 1/4 inch guideline all around the edges. And just with my rotary cutter, I'm going to trim off that edge. And with this new trimmed ruler, I am going to cut some negative space from my 9.5 inch squares. So I have these, I think, what is it? Color 3? Or is it color 5? Let's see. This is my color 3 9.5 inch square. So I'm going to cut out the negative space. So let's look at the diagram. It looks like this goes in that right corner. And you want to make sure if you have directional fabric, it's facing the direction you want it to be, because this is how it's going to look in the quilt. So if I want these really subtle stripes to be going horizontally, then I want to cut my negative space that way. Okay, so now I'm just going to line up my ruler. And this is where those heavyweight templated papers are kind of nice and handy. And just like that, I hold it with my left hand because I'm a righty. And I cut out that negative space. And I'm going to set this aside. So I'm going to do that for all of my color 3 blocks. So I did all of my cutting with template A trimmed, and then I trimmed it one more time. And now I'm going to cut the negative space out of this square. And I want my plaid to be vertical, and so I have it directional. And then I have this facing side up, because that's how it's supposed to be in the pattern. And I've actually stacked, you can see, about 3 pieces of fabric on top of each other. Oh, can you hear Scrap? My dog Scrappy is trying to get in. Well, it's kind of hard for me to cut at this angle, but you can see that I would slice it just like this. Should we let Scrappy in?